Hey, everybody. We are live. Let's get over to my live chat here. Joe, how are you doing? You did get the first comment. Nice. All right. We don't have anything really on the agenda tonight. I am going to get a few of the tanks topped off. You can see this 55 here. No, the Garami tank here. You can see we need to put a little water in that. The 125 down here needs a little top off, and the discus tank could probably use a little top off. And so that's all we got on the agenda for tonight, is just to get some tanks topped off. But let's get everybody fed first. And we'll start with the goldfish pond here, which is still looking nice and clean after my filtering the other day. Man, you're not kidding about those mites. I'm down to, again, I have 2 plants left to harvest that are just about done and still look good. They still look mite free. They're not perfect. They're a little pale and yellow. I probably didn't feed them enough during the flowering period, but they're good. And, they're going to be really good. And I should get a lot of weed out of that. And I'm hoping it'll be enough to carry me through till I can get my next plants going. I do have 2 small plants that are like cutting size. They're only about 8 or 10 inches tall and only have a few leaves on them. So I have been keeping those alive. I have been spraying them. And so far, they look okay. But I've been down this road before of thinking everything looks okay, only to find out, I stopped spraying for a week and suddenly there's mites everywhere again. And so this time I'm going to let it go for as long as I can. And I'm going to try to just leave my tents and my vegging area and everything just empty with no plants in it. I believe that mites will only live for about a week or two most without plants to feed on. If they don't, they're just going to die off. And so that's the plan, is to just fucking starve them to death, even if I don't, obviously spraying everywhere. My basement's not clean and I would have to literally take my tents apart and spray the equipment down and wipe everything out. It's easier for me to just leave them in dry dock, so to speak. Just let them sit there for 2 weeks, and anything that's in there that was alive will be dead by the end of it. And I should be able to go from there. So hopefully we'll get a reset on the weed. And I think I'm also going to take my wife's advice. And, she regularly tells me that I just overestimate how much weed I need to grow, and I don't need to shove so many fucking plants in each one of my tents. And I think if instead of having a bunch of little ones crammed in there together, or even worse, some big ones crammed in there together, just have a plant or 2 in each tent and call it good. And, I don't need to have this production line of weed coming through like I'm feeding an army, And so I'm going to try going that route too. Smaller plants, but maybe, or less frequent plants, but maybe just bigger, fuller, larger plants, one at a time rather than a bunch. So I don't know. We'll see. But those mites are got me in my fucking wit's end. And right now we're just hitting off a bowl with some Blue Dream in it. Doesn't even have any oil or anything on it. It's just a bud in a bowl, like a goddamn barbarian. All right, let me see where I was. There I was. I've done one autoflower and I did not like it. Hey, Quaz, how are you? Mel, 2 weeks from your first harvest. Nice. The only autoflower I ever had an experience with was an Amnesia Haze, and it was huge. And even in my tall tent, it outgrew the tent. I had to lean it over and bend it. I was afraid I was ultimately going to have to like cut the top of it off because it was just going to grow right up into the light. And with autoflowers, like there's nothing you can do about that. So you either have to find one that will grow to fill the space you've got, or you've got to have a lot of space, you know. And so I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of the autoflowers. I like to be able to control the size of the plant, and the way you control the size of the plant is by when you shift it from vegging to flowering. So if you want a plant that's only 18 inches tall when it's finished, you put it into the 12 and 12. You know, you take it out of the vegging and you put it into the flowering when it's about 12 inches tall. And by the time it sort of tops out and finishes and changes over into flowering, at the end of the day, at the end of the process, you'll get about an 18-inch tall plant. And every plant's growth habit is a little different. Some grow a little more in that changeover period. Some grow a little less during that changeover period. But once you sort of dial it in and you know what plant you're dealing with and you know what kind of space you're dealing with, you can basically custom make your plants for, I want them this tall, and that'll fit in my space. You just can't do stuff like that with the autoflowers. You can't make cuttings with the autoflowers. You pretty much just have to plant the seed and go for the ride, and you get what you get. So I don't dislike them. I mean, they serve their purpose, and they're, some people like them, and if they like using them, then that's certainly what they should use. But for the way I grow and the different tents I have and everything, it would be really tough for me to get an autoflower that would just be sort of universal for me. Laura. Oh, thanks, Mel. Oh, let's see. Just chat and show you out. I can do that because I had some thinking going on with my mushroom juice yesterday. I had a really good mushroom day yesterday. It's only 22 inches? Wow. I had mine in my tent that is 81 inches tall. And remember, you can't grow all the way up to the top of an 81-inch tent. I need to have a light hanging in there. There's got to be space above the light for ventilation. And then, of course, you can't grow your flowers right up to the light. You need space underneath of the light, between the canopy and the light. So an 81-inch tent, you can realistically grow maybe 55 or 60 inches. And you're getting really close to the light at 60 inches, My latest ones that are in there are like 54 inches, and they're pretty close to the light. If they got any taller, I would have had to like jerry rig the light somehow closer to the top of the canopy. But I've already got it hoisted up as far as it'll go, and my plants are still within inches of the light, which is way closer than they really should be. But it doesn't seem to be burning them up or having any issues, and so I'm not going to be too concerned about it. In fact, at this point, they're almost finished. They got about a week left. So my 81-inch tall tent is my tallest tent, but an auto that's going to get, and eventually this thing got taller than me. I had to bend the stalk like a bow as it was growing. I had to keep leaning it over and putting stakes in and pulling it sideways so it grew up and curved over at an angle. And even then, it was still almost going to grow up into the light, and I had to lean the plant kind of on its side in the pot. I had to put like a prop under one side of the pot to lean it over even further so that it was kind of growing diagonally through the tent in a curve. And that was the only way it all eventually fit in there. I think in the end, I might have actually had to pull it out of the tent and just put it on the floor in the basement and put a light over top of it. Actually, I think I did do that. I think I actually took it out of the tent and put it in the over where my lab is before it was my lab, and hung a light directly over it and just let it grow in the basement because it outgrew my tent. And that was my one and only experience with a autoflower. So you can see why I'm just not a really big fan of trying one of them again. All right, let's see. Hey, Mei Ling, how are you this evening? Let's see. Just make sure I didn't miss any comments here. And it doesn't seem so. So I actually was going to save my mushrooms for my basement time down here at night with my music and my colored lights and all that kind of stuff. And yesterday was just so amazingly beautiful, gorgeous out. And I wanted to go out on the kayak, and my mushrooms arrived in the mail. And I thought about it for about 10 seconds, and I was like, if this isn't, like, what the fuck, dude? You can sit in your basement in the fucking dark, or you could, enjoy these mushrooms out on the gorgeous day on your kayak. So I took a big swig of the shroom juice right before. Now remember, this isn't real psilocybin mushrooms. This is some other concoction that doesn't make you really truly trip, but it gives you a very, very psychotropic experience if you consume a significant amount of it. And I did, and I drank it right before I paddled away from the boat launch. And about an hour later, I was way up north, and it started rolling on to me. And it was a windy day, which, if anybody, my regulars know how I feel about paddling kayak on a windy day. And I went with the wind when I paddled out, which I rarely do. So I let the wind push me as I paddled up, upstream and went up north. And eventually I got to a point where I realized, like, I don't want to have to paddle back through all this. And so I kind of stopped and made my way back from there. But I did have to paddle back in a lot of wind, into the wind. And I realized about halfway back that I was smiling, and like I had an actual smile on my face. I was just enjoying every moment of it, like the water splashing in my face and the waves, and like all of it just felt like it was supposed to be there. And that's the thing I keep saying about when I take this mushroom juice. It just gives me this sense of rightness with the world. Like everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. I was thinking about it last night and thinking about how everything under the sun is in tune, but for once the sun is not eclipsed by the moon. Like everything's just in tune. Everything is how it's supposed to be. I thought today that if I ever got thrown into the total perspective vortex, I'd like to be on these mushrooms because I would probably survive it. I'd be like, yeah, that seems about right. That's about where I belong. So the idea of the wind in my face and the water splashing on me and everything, that just seemed like that's supposed to be how that was supposed to be. And it wasn't bothering me. I was smiling. And the smiling thing was what really killed me. I realized I was actually just smiling as I paddled along. I laugh a lot, but I seldom smile. If you look at my face in videos, whether I'm doing like an OnlyFans video or I'm doing a kayaking video or I'm doing one of my fish keeping videos, if you look at my face, I just have this fucking stone face look where it's just like intense concentration. Doesn't look like I'm scowling necessarily, but it just looks like I'm focused. I'm concentrating. I'm not enjoying the moment. I'm focused on the moment. And I've even made jokes about, like, you should see my face when I'm when I'm not happy, or you should see my face when I'm not having a good time, because I just always have this stone face expression. And so the idea that I'm just like grinning like an idiot, just paddling along with this fucking smile on my face, like that in itself was remarkable to me, that I was just smiling as I paddled along. And then you couple that with the fact that I was paddling into wind and waves and water splashing in my face and was still just smiling and enjoying all of that. It was just a great day out on the kayak. I really enjoyed the hell out of it. But one of the things I realized while I was out there thinking about things from an altered state was that I need to do something different with my live stream here. I think I've become too reliant on conversation and just hanging out. And I don't think that's necessarily what's going to drive an audience. Not everybody wants to go and hang out with somebody. What they want to do is they want to go and watch a show. And I don't really have any. There's no, I mean, other than walking around feeding my fish tanks and going around the room and chatting while we do it, there's no real structure to my live streams. There's no real focus or purpose or point. There's no topic I talk about. And I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily, but I have to put on a show. Even if it's just doing something stupid like putting a puzzle together while I talk, I have to be doing something that the audience can watch me be doing, can visually partake in without having to be a part of the conversation and prompting me to say things and asking me questions and all that. So I need to think more about this and come up with some sort of way of making this into more of a show that isn't reliant. Like if I spent 2 hours without an audience saying anything to me, if you all wanted to just sit there and watch me for 2 hours, what could I be doing that would be interesting enough for people to just watch for 2 hours, even if we weren't chatting about it? And at this point, I have no fucking clue what that might be. But I think I need more purpose to my live streams and less just rambling, chatty kindness. Again, I like the idea of like hanging out with me on a Friday night or whatever, but that only goes so far, and I think it has its limitations. Stop saying fail. I meant to talk to you about that, Laura. I'll send you a text privately later. Remind me if I forget about the stop sign apprentice thing. Oh, and an inflatable raft against the wind? That would be bloody hell. I hate it in the kayak, but I hate it for different reasons than you. In an inflatable, though, that must be a nightmare trying to paddle into the wind. You may as well paddle a parachute. Yeah, that pleco is over 12 inches from tip to tip. Actually, what you're struggling with business-wise? Dark Knight, you're back. Michael, how are you? Well, thank you. I actually thought about making the mushroom trip some sort of, aspect of the live show, but that would get boring quickly. Like, how many times do you want to watch me trip? Secondly, the mushrooms I'm doing now, I mean, until my own grow comes around, which I don't know when that's going to be, if it's going to ever pan out. I'm hoping I can get a successful grow. I thought about checking my culture tonight to see if the mycelium was growing, but it's tomorrow is the day I'm supposed to check it, so I'm going to be a good boy and I'm going to wait till tomorrow. I'm not going to fuck with it until the day, and but I was going to peek today and just see if it was ready, but I decided I'm going to wait. But the mushroom thing would get really expensive. Obviously, it would have to be a way to self finance at the very least. I'm looking to make money and revive the channel. So if I was doing something like the mushroom thing and I was barely breaking even with the amount, I was just getting people to cover the cost of the mushroom juice I was drinking every night. That wouldn't really make a lot of sense, other than I'd probably either wreck my brain or have a great time. I don't know if I could do a bottle at a time every fucking live show. That would be a bit much. Oh, glad to hear it, Michael. Been growing mushrooms and a super cool hobby. Yeah, I don't know, I never really thought much about it, but I never, recently I got some magic mushrooms from a friend of mine, like some real psilocybin mushrooms. And they, again, more, if you missed all the drama a few weeks ago when I was eating them, it was more of a therapeutic thing than a recreational thing. It seemed to help with my ADHD and my depression and some bad habits and some compulsive behavior. It was amazing, and I want more of that. And of course, I do also want to have some fun recreationally with them as well. But that shit gets expensive. And the only way I could get mushrooms at this point, like real mushrooms, would be to either drive down to a dispensary in DC, which I have no desire to do, or just grow them myself. You can order grow kits online where you get the spores and you get a medium to grow them in. And so that's what I did, and I got it all started. And so within tomorrow is the first milestone. Tomorrow we check to see if the mycelium is cultured and is starting to spread out. If it is, I break that all up and I mix it all around, and that'll get the mycelium mixed all through the substrate. And then we put it back in and let it grow for 2 more weeks. And then at that point, we'll start the flushing or flowering process. And a couple weeks after that, hopefully, I'll get myself a big old bag of psilocybin mushrooms. So maybe by the holiday season, we'll be having some very different trip experiences on the live stream, but we'll see. The Grammys are doing okay. That one that was looking bad, it did pass away. I will show you where I put them. It's the bag itself is just a grow bag. It's a little bit bigger than like a brown paper lunch bag, but it's clear and it's got medium in it, and it's got a little injection port where you can stick a hypodermic needle. You see how I've just almost stripped everything out. There's these 2 plants I've got left. I'm not even sure that one's going to survive. I've got a seed started, but that hasn't even cracked yet. And in that box right there is my bag of mushrooms, and then that's the syringe that they came in. I put the syringe back in. I got enough for like 2 more injections. So inside this box is the bag, and then tomorrow we open that box up, and hopefully the mycelium will be growing in a big cluster, like right around the injection port where I put the spores in. And if that's the case, what you do is you break that clump of mycelium up, and you shake the bag all around, you mix it up, and it spreads that mycelium all through the substrate, and then it goes right back into that box, and it sits for 2 more weeks while it sort of regrows. And at that point, it grows through the whole entire medium. And so in a couple of weeks, I should have what looks like a big block of like fungi cheese with mold growing all over it. It should just be a big wad of like moldy looking stuff in there. And then you expose it to a little bit of oxygen, you vent some of the CO2 off, and you give it a little bit of light during the day, and it'll start sprouting mushrooms. And within a couple of weeks, I should have a bag full of fucking mushrooms. Again, if everything goes as, it's supposed to. So it seems like a pretty easy process. It actually seems a hell of a lot easier than growing weed, that's for sure. To do this, you don't need anything other than enough space to put a small box somewhere in a corner. Literally, you can put it behind your couch or in the closet or something. You just let it sit for a couple of weeks. You open it up, do your thing, put it back in the closet for 2 more weeks, open it up, and then you got a bunch of mushrooms. You don't need any special lighting. You don't need any special ventilating. Nothing. It's all you need is a small box to put in a corner somewhere. And so I'm pretty excited. I hope it works out. Bob. How often do I get new fish? I haven't gotten new fish in years. I've had some given to me. Hey, Annabelle. Yeah, it says to it says to inject anywhere from like 2 to 5 milliliters of the solution, but I'll show it to you so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. I think it'll come out on camera. When I looked at the syringe, it says in the instructions to shake the syringe thoroughly to make sure you've spread the spores throughout the whole, all the solution. And then that way you're definitely injecting some spores when you do it. But if you look at it, let's see if this comes out on camera or not. You can kind of see it. It's probably going to be worse if I light the light. It should be backlit to really see it more properly. You can kind of see how there's like some cloudy material in the middle there. That is what I assume the spores part is the cloudiness in the middle. And it did not matter how much I shook it up, I could not get that cloudiness to really spread out through the solution that was in there. And so what I did was when I injected it, I looked at it closely and I squeezed it in slowly, and I made sure I saw a fairly significant portion of that cloudy stuff shoot down the needle and go into the injection port. And then so I wound up doing about 5 mil out of it. About half the syringe is what I squirted out of it. But I had to, like, the cloudy stuff wasn't up near the tip, so I had to squirt a significant amount out just to get the cloudiness to the needle, and then I had to make sure enough went out that I was pretty confident that I was getting some spores in there. So the rest of the needle, that stuff is spread out pretty evenly throughout the rest of the solution that's in there. So the next time I do an injection, I can probably do about half of it and still get the spores in there. And then likewise, I can probably do a third injection where I use about, whatever's left. I can also, I'm going to experiment with taking clumps of the material, like as it's in the flowering process, break a piece off, or before it goes into the flowering process, try to break a piece off and put it in the some different medium and try to, like, basically do like a mother culture and see if I can start another grow with my original culture, and then that way I won't have to use any more of my spores. And ultimately, if you harvest before the mushrooms go to spore, the mycelium will keep growing. So you can do a quick harvest, close it back up, put it back in the closet. 2 weeks later, you'll get another grow, and you should be able to do that for at least several cycles before it starts dying off. And then, of course, all you have to do on that last one is wait until it goes to spore and collect some of the spores. And then you can just put those spores in some new medium, and you should be able to just get the next batch going again. So I'm hoping that I don't have to buy any more spores, and I may not even have to buy any more medium if I can figure out how to do a tub method here at the house and just make my own medium, put it in a tub, and grow the mushrooms right in a tub instead of one of these special bags. If I do that, I won't have to buy anything else at all. I can just grow mushrooms from now on. Now, I'll grant you, it'll be the same kind of mushroom over and over and over again. If I want to mix it up, I would have to buy different spores and start a new grow. But right now, the stuff I'm growing is called Golden Teacher. It seems to be a very popular mushroom, and it seems to be described as the kind of mushroom I'm looking for. Very introspective, a lot of visuals, very chill, low propensity for anxiety, not too intense. Sounds right up my alley. Stream should come with an epilepsy warning. I didn't even think about that. I don't think injecting mushroom spores into your body would be a good idea. I wouldn't start with the blue meanies. I looked at those two, and everybody, basically, the blue meanies are a very, very challenging mushroom to grow. Experienced growers grow that. The environment is super sensitive to. It's super sensitive to the substrate it's growing in. I mean, if you bought a kit that was designed for that mushroom, maybe then it might work out for you. But I went with the one that was more recommended for beginners, which is, in both senses, it's the easiest to grow. It's very forgivable. The Golden Teacher can grow in a lot of different sorts of medium, so it should be a fairly, hardy mushroom species, fairly easy to grow for a beginner. But it's also good for beginner trippers. Not that I'm a beginner tripper, but it's that low intensity. I don't know. It just seems like it's going to be a good place to start, and then I can go from there. Starting with the blue meanies, which are the world's most potent psilocybin mushrooms, or at least were. They're actually starting to crossbreed and hybrid and make new strains, and they're starting to come up with some really fucking scary ass mushrooms. But naturally occurring mushrooms, blue meanies, are some really power packed mushrooms. Yeah, I like those diamond tetras too, Michael. Let's see. Just getting caught up. Joel, hello. I think I said hi already, Joel, but I'll say hi again just in case. How big is an angelfish? Daniel, how are you? Their bodies, if you don't count the tail, their bodies get 4 or 5 inches, maybe up to 6 inches if you get a big one. Oh, if you're asking how big that angelfish is, maybe 4 inches if you don't count the tail. Everybody knows about Spirit Halloween Store. I've never been into a Spirit Halloween Store, but I know what they are. Air scrubber and a temp controller. See, the one thing everybody keeps talking about is this sterility, and like that's the thing that's got me nervous. Is like, what is the issue? If I'm assuming I'm creating an environment where like molds and shit like that can grow pretty effectively. Is that the problem? Like if I contaminate it with some other kind of mold, I'm going to open my tub up and all my mushrooms are going to be all moldy with some blue mold or something growing all over them. Or is it an issue where the mushrooms might die if some other mold or something gets in there? Because I got mold and mildew all over the damn place down here in my very damp basement. The idea that I'm going to do anything that's sterile and I'm going to have absolute, because I saw people doing it in tubs where they would set up still tents where they were little small tents they would put on their table and they could stick their arms inside of it. And then that way they could work without any, air currents or disturbing the air that was moving through the room. And I'm thinking like this, I'm not that guy. I'm not the scientist guy that's like goes in a fucking sterile room. Like that's why I got mites all over my goddamn weed plants, is because this is my basement. This is not a sterile environment. And again, I have mold and mildew all over the fucking place down here. So I just assumed if you just got some of the spores in some soil. Now I was going to sterilize the potting mix and bleach, or alcohol, wipe down the tub and everything before I got started. But after that, I was just not going to worry about it. I was, once you got it sterile and closed up, what's going to get in there? And then as far as when it's time to vent to let a little bit of air in, I would think something as simple as cutting a hole in the top of the lid and covering it with a coffee filter, to keep the dust and stuff out. The coffee filter would make for a good enough filter. Some kind of cross contamination. Yeah, that's just what I was figuring. If you're literally creating an environment for mushrooms to grow, you're just begging to have other shit grow in there too. Yeah, the bag method is, when hey Chris. With the bag, it comes sealed and everything inside the bag is sterile. Your hypodermic comes sterile, and the syringe has a cap on it, and the needle itself comes